Let me ask you something. Are you sitting with a big chunk of cash in your bank account right now, staring at you? You're staring at it, and it's that awkward silence where you don't know what to do. Well, a lot of people are. And the reason that they're doing that is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And that uncertainty has put a pause on a lot of people's actions. So to get to the bottom of what's going on in the marketplace, we created a free webinar where I had 3 elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs come as panelists to answer the question of should we be investing in real estate deals right now. You can get access to that webinar for free at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals. Look, we all know that real estate has created more millionaires than pretty much any other business. The problem is, it's also created a lot of heartaches and bankruptcies. Sure, we can get access to a ton of real estate education on the internet, but that's precisely the problem. How can we tell which strategies will consistently produce asymmetric returns and which should be avoided at all costs? My goal is to give real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, and investors all of the secrets so that we can grow our portfolios without dealing with costly investment nightmares. And that's what this program is all about. I'm Hunter Thompson, and welcome to the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. Normally, when I say things like, there's a hack for this, you can reverse engineer this and do this much more quickly than other people, and here's the tools, here's the template, here's the framework, it's usually a setup to do something more easily than otherwise. Well, I'm not so sure that that's the case with this little hack, but I will let you in on a secret. If you want to surround yourself with amazing, high-performing people that are constantly obsessed with growth and not letting past challenges or challenges in general get in the way of their success, take up an endurance sport. Endurance athletes specifically have this rock-solid foundation of overcoming adversity, both internally and externally, because of what they do. And today we have an excellent interview with someone who is doing this at an elite ultramarathon plus level. And we have a really interesting conversation about overcoming adversities. We have a really interesting conversation about what to do when you fall off track, how to ensure that a bad day doesn't become a bad year, what motivates our guest when things get really, really tough, and how he applies this not only in athletics and running in particular, but also in business in general, and some of the key takeaways of his new book, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So a really interesting conversation with someone who succeeds both at real estate and in the world of athletics, and also has time to have a family and write a book. So a lot of hacks in here that I think may help, but they're certainly not going to make your life more easy, because that's not really the point of these types of hacks. Now, if you haven't yet created an account with ASIM Capital, make sure to do so ASAP. Our current offering, which I talked about before, which is in the ATM business, is available only through the website. You have to create an account. You have to be an accredited investor. That's available. And really, just generally speaking, if you want to have access to any future investment opportunities with ASIM Capital, make sure to create an account. You'll be the first one to know, so that when we do send out an email, you can instantly have access to it. Otherwise, you have to wait for the podcast, may get oversubscribed. You know the deal. That's happened to us in plenty of previous opportunities. So, asymcapital.com, and I'll see you on the inside. Hope you enjoy the episode. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Today, our guest is Jason Yarusi, who is an active real estate syndicator, podcaster, and workout enthusiast. Jason hosts the Jason and Pili Project podcast, which helps people crush limiting beliefs and create their own comeback story. He's also the owner of Yarusi Holdings, which controls 800 units of multifamily real estate. And his latest run was a 100-mile virtual race in less than a day, which is a grind. Look, doing a 100-mile race where you know that every couple miles you see the friends and the family and the people that come out to cheer you on is one thing, but to do that grind virtually is another animal. And I did see a post you did about that, which honestly brought tears to my eyes. I want to start the conversation there. Welcome to the program. Walk us through what that 100-mile race was like.
Well, man, thank you so much. Yeah, I always love being here. We just have the best conversation. Really just looking forward to today's topic. And, you know, again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I go into these races, and what I've learned from these points is that you can really attribute a lot of this race to what happens in life, right? You can create the narrative. I want to run 100 miles today, but that route is going to have unknowns to it. And so many times when we're chasing goals, we're going after what we want, we won't do it because we can't know every step along the way. And so for us to know that, okay, my goal here is to run 100 miles, but changing up all the things that are usually a given, right? So to do a virtual race, well, now you take away, okay, what's the route? Well, I'm choosing that route. And okay, how do I deal with, having everything prepared for me, the start, the finish line, the aid stations along the way, just the camaraderie that comes with these races. Well, that's all out the window. And this race alone was all going to be off pavement, right? So we're in New Jersey where you have more roads than you can find anything else that's going to take you for that part. So I had to put my mind to the test here where these things that usually become a given for me were now part of my plan. I had to figure out a route. And that worked at first until 5 20-mile loops became a 21-mile loop that it turned out to be. Because I'd driven around and, you can get as much as you can on that route, but it ended up being, 5 21-mile loops. And that was fine until the last one became this weird, kind of put together 16-mile loop where I tried to figure it out. And that's typically where things go off the deep end, right? So I had all these points, had things kind of figured out and just went for it. It worked great for the family because we had home base. And so Pili and the kids, instead of being out here in some foreign area, a different state or different place, they were now able to just have home base. So they weren't so far out there. So it was easier from that dynamic. But for me, I had to map out this course where I could do this and have drop bags out there where at least I could catch some kind of nutrition throughout. And it was one of these things where I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to react. I've run a mix of roads and trails before for the distance, but I had never run so long on pavement that day. So I said to myself, okay, we're just going to go out there. And it ended up, I had people reach out that just wanted to be a part. And that was one of the most fulfilling part of that day, because although I'm doing a 100-mile race, I had people break all kinds of barriers. I had a guy, James, did like 35 miles and he had never done he had done just recently 30, but he had never run that long. I had Gabe De Silva, who had never run more than 12 miles, ran over 20. I had my friend Sonny, who had ACL surgery, hadn't run in over a year and a half, more than 5 or 6 miles, came out and did, literally was away with family, got back, got off a plane and came and ran 20 something miles. I had my friend Eddie King and Kevin McCormick just start the day at 5 a.m. with me and just get out there and just really push and did. I think Kevin had never run more than like 10 miles and he did like 15. And it was just having that around you. Like that's what life's about. You have your thing, but you're able to just feel the camaraderie and feel everything that's there. And that was another point. I don't run with people. And I say that lightly. It's just, I like you and I have run, we've had every like, but my day to day is me versus me. And so to have this, I also didn't know if that was going to detract because now you have to spend energy being there, right? So being involved, and that's another step to it. And so it's creating that mindset that, okay, I can't control everything, but all I can control is what's happening now. And I can set myself up for the best case scenario. And that did great. And by mile 84, when I got back to the finish of the 4 loops right there, it was me and I think 4 other guys at that time. There was 3 other guys at that time. And they had cut out. It was their time. It was about whatever it was, 10:30 at night. And here I am. I tell myself, dress warm, because I've made this mistake before. Your body's so depleted. You're so run down, but you don't know that. You just have the energy going and you tell yourself you're fine. So I put on another layer. I went out and within like a half hour, I was frozen. And now here I am. I'm running a course that's not the 20-mile loops. I'm trying to do this ad hoc 16-mile loop to get myself to this point right here. So what happens now? I don't have my drop bags. And now I'm out here in the dark. I'm freezing. I don't have my drop bags. I'm off course. So it's like those things where the hardest moment is now when you have to step. You're just trying to find the miles because you don't have a route. Mm-hmm. And that goes a lot with goals in life. Like we don't have a route. We're trying to accomplish the goal. We don't have that step to take. We're out there fishing for where to go. So I started accomplishing miles, and I actually got to a point where I ended up in the park. Funny enough, I get to the end of this park, and because it was midnight at that point, they had locked the other side of the park. And for whatever reason, the only thing that came to my mind was, I don't know if we're big Star Wars fans, so the Mandalorian, this is the way. That's the only thought that came to my mind. Is like, I'm going over this fence. I'm not running backwards because this is the only way I can go right now. So, but frozen hands, frozen feet, somehow climbed this fence over, got over this fence, and just kept along the journey. And I got to where I was something like close. I think I was like a mile away from 100 miles, just to find myself right by the house, right? And it's one of those decisions, right? Okay, cool. I just go home. I've done enough. But now, I'm here to get this done. I've told myself this is done. It's me versus me. And it's how you show up when no one's looking at it that creates who you are. So turn around, went back out into the dark, figured out that last mile, and just brought it home. And to tell you, you get home, and it's one of those points where you're always trying to understand what you've done to take it all in. And it was one of those great accomplishments because I was joined by so many other people that were doing things outside their boundaries, because my heart is no different than someone else's heart who's maybe running a mile for their first time, or someone who hasn't got off the couch. It's all hard. It's just now we're pushing ourselves past our heart to find our new heart. And for me, it was like saying, okay, I did that. Great. I feel the accomplishment there. I feel what we were able to accomplish, and just having so many other people there to be able to be a part of the journey made everything that much more special.
Yeah, man, I'm glad I asked that. I didn't even know if we're going to talk about that, which is crazy given the content that we're discussing, but I'm very glad I asked that because I saw a post you did on social media about that. And, everybody gets inspiration from different things. And I picked up on kind of where you get inspired from. I think it's kind of that freaking blue collar, tough as nails, New Jersey shit where you're not going to gloat about your accomplishments. You're literally going to check it off the box and keep moving.
Yeah.
And I like that about you. But I get inspiration from really enthusiastically trying to encourage myself to get to levels that I was at previously. Does that make sense? Like, there's a difference there. And the reason I mention this is that you really dove in to that accomplishment, but it wasn't because of what you accomplished. It's because of what the others accomplished around you in support of you. And I felt like that was so powerful. Like, you saw
great.
Your journey bringing people around you to new heights, and you were like, wow, now I am really proud of myself. Does that resonate with you? At least that's what was communicated in that post.
It is. And, you don't know, again, what you don't know, right? So to see that happen throughout the day, it just starts to dawn on you, like what's happening around you, right? Because to be honest, I knew I was getting that done that day. There was no other option. That's what I was there for. Like, right. So I was getting that done. But there are other people that this was like, I don't know if I can do this, right?
They're walking on the moon.
Just start going on the journey. And here we are in the journey, and they see me pushing, and they're like, and you get to the point like, well, if he's going to do this, I can do this. I'm telling myself I can. And that's that first step, right? So my mind is now not going to be the thing that stops me, because generally that's what happens, right? So we have this point, and maybe we can do it, but our mind's like, I don't know if today's our day. So let's see, maybe we'll try this again later on, but you sure you want to do this today? Because your mind always wants to protect you, right? When you don't need that protection, but your mind wants to put you in a place that you're safe and you're comfortable. And that leaves you in a place that even if you're not in the place where you're most happy, even if you're not the place you're most fulfilled, it's seemingly safer than potentially finding that great accomplishment, because that's something you haven't had happen before. And so you will go back to that safe place, even though it's uncomfortable, and say, okay, I'll stay here because I know that. Even if I'm not happy, I know that.
Let me ask you something. I don't know if it took place during this race or some others. I'm sure you've been there, but that point where things start to fall apart a little bit and you actually have to dig deep. Like you mentioned, I knew it was going to get done. Was there any time in that race where you kind of breached that this is starting to be a question mark, either in this race or others, given what you've kind of done especially when it comes to the ultra marathons?
It's It's not so much that I'm not going to get it done, because I've literally set up there with one agenda, and unless it was something stretching me off, I was getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that point where you have that doubt, where you're out there in the universe going, what the hell am I doing? Right. There's a points, right, that you have like a 25-degree drop between the night and the day. And your body is now just, I think I put out somewhere in the point, like 17,000, 16,000 calories that day. So now, no matter how much I eat, I couldn't eat anymore, right? I just couldn't take any calories. So I was frozen, right? Like an iceberg. Like you feel like if you tapped your hand on a wall, your hand would break. You're so cold. When you get to that point where your body's depleted, your mind definitely wants to give you that point. Like, hey, listen, little Jason, it's okay. You gave it your best. It's okay. Like, hey, if you want to call it here, it's cool. It's cool. But that's the moments where you have to put yourself up against there. And I've done it with, I remember, not my first marathon, but I had another marathon where I was out there, and it was Brooklyn, where I really look at the route beforehand. And so this one happened to be just a one loop race, which, if like anything, is like sometimes the most hardest race, because you're just running. It's like a crazy loop of chaos where you just run the same loop. And this is early in the journey. I could just remember, being frozen. I think it was maybe early December, if that's right. And you're just running this loop, and you're just like, what am I doing? And you have that moment. But those are the moments where you have to put in the work, because it's not so much what you're doing now, it's the accomplishment, right? And so not every part of the journey is going to be fulfilling and happy and glad. But you do have to look back and say, okay, that's a lesson I need to learn. Because there's going to be many points in my day, in my life, that are just not going to be ideal. And if I focus on them, that's where a lot of people get stuck. We focus on those moments that are just not ideal for you. And you say, okay, even if that was like 2% of your day, you'll have 80% of your focus on 2% of your day, right? And so you get locked in on these moments that aren't great. And that's where all your direction go, is that I don't want to have this bad moment of the day. So you'll tend to avoid that by all means necessary. And you'll stop anything that can become difficult, even if it's a blip in your radar, even if it's a blip in your life. But for those who can look past that and say, okay, this may suck right now. Like, this may be horrible for whatever, 10 minutes, a week, a month, a year of work. But the growth from here is going to give me everything I need to be who I am and who I should be. And if you can look at that and say, okay, if I do this, this is going to give me the advantage, the ability to be my best self. Well, that's where the ones who really just stand out and just carry it through, they have their best lives. That's where they come from.
Let me ask you this. You recently put out a book that I'm real excited I can't wait to get my hands on it. Well, first of all, tell us the title of the book, and
Sure.
Also how you work in some of these concepts into really what you're trying to accomplish.
So we actually have it launching here. I'm not sure we're launching, but we're into December. It's How to Master a Fit Rich Life in 15 Days. And it's tactical advice to crush your self-limiting beliefs and create your own comeback story. And what I found is that, we get a lot of questions, we coach a lot of people. And one of the constant ones is that, like, I don't quite know how I got here. I'm here, but I know I have more to give, but I just don't know where to go from here. I feel stuck, or I feel that I'm lost on my direction. And there's so many out here, and I've been there myself. And so as Pili, is that, okay, here we are, but we're not done. We're not done. We have so much more to give. And it got to the point that we just started really just putting, words to paper and saying, well, these have been steps that we've taken to course correct, to change, to pivot, to really set a different tone for us to live the fulfilling life that we're constantly working towards. And there became that we had really 15 action steps that you could do in 15 days. And so many times that we stop, right? Because I find there's the achievement and the goal. And many times people get these confused. And so the achievement may be, okay, like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, like just something obscure, right? Okay, you're at the top and that's where it is. Well, the goal may be to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And when you think of these, they sound the same, but so many times we think of the achievement as the goal. And so because other people have done that, it's so scary to us, we won't start, because we're not on the top of the mountain being like, I've conquered this. I've conquered this achievement, where the goal is saying, I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So what are those action steps I need to take to break it down? Maybe I need hiking boots. Maybe I need to figure out, my transit to get there. Maybe I need to get a guide. Maybe I need to start doing different exercises to make me stronger. Well, that's how you can accomplish a goal. But we get scared because we look at these things. And this goes back to the social media stance where we see everybody in these monumental achievements, but we can't see ourselves there because we haven't been there. So we won't look at it as the goal and the steps we need to get there. So we started creating winning attitudes in our day, in our mind. We started saying, okay, we have to create a narrative here that we can get ourselves used to winning. And winning gets lost in the subjective, that winning means that, okay, I beat you, or I got to the point of, winning a race, or I got the job promotion. No, winning is creating a winning attitude in your mind. And that could be getting up earlier. It could be as simple as making the bed. It could be hugging your kids every day. It could be taking your wife out, just creating winning things in your day, because that's what you do to win. And it's the growth and the series and the stacking of these little wins that allow you to be ready when your opportunity comes. And everybody says, you're not lucky. I'm not. Well, I'm not lucky. I'm not ready. I never get that big chance, but it's always there for us. But when it comes, we haven't allowed ourselves to be ready for it. So we're not ready. It shows up in front of us and we haven't put in the work to say, okay, I know how to win. So I'm just going to use that winning attitude and put it here. And here's my chance, and seize that chance.
Yeah, that is really powerful. So let me touch on something that kind of was inspired by what you just said. So one of the reasons I love producing content is that it requires that you look for unique angles on things other people are seeing. As an example, if I'm going to create a solo episode every week, which I do, and I know you do a lot as well, in order to create those episodes, you have to be looking around the world for interesting things to talk about. And one of those things is opportunities, right? And so when you start getting in that frame of where can I find wins in my life? How can I maximize wins in my life? If I'm going to a conference, what am I going to see about that conference and take a unique angle about this so I can talk to other people that were at that conference too, but didn't see this as an opportunity?
Yeah.
And it actually turns you into kind of a machine. So like what you're talking about it resonates so hard because, taking your wife out, for example, it's like some people take that for granted. Some people do it, but they don't think about it conscientiously as if I'm doing something special and this should be treated special. But once you start looking at it like that, that is a win. That is a step in the right direction. You go, okay, that's one win. Let me see if I can get 2 wins. And therefore more and more and more. Does that resonate with you?
It sure does. That's right. And you're allowing yourself to stack the progress. And it really starts by just changing your focus, right? And changing your focus away from those things that are just, okay, I need to win. Because what happens is that someone else is seemingly so far ahead of you that you'll just give up because that guy's so far ahead of me, so he must be lucky. Or that girl has had everything handed to her, so she must be in this point and I don't. Well, then you say to yourself, well, okay, I can. So it's now changing your focus to say, I deserve to be my best self. I deserve to be that person. So what's going to take? It's breaking your pattern in your day, because we get up and we're so comfortable with our routine that we wake up into the chaotic approach that we've allowed our day to take. And it steamrolls us throughout the day until we now put our head back in the pillow and go, what just happened? Just to do the same thing tomorrow. Instead of waking up, taking control of your day, getting some wins out of the way. So no matter what happens, so no matter what punch comes at you, no matter you getting kicked in the kneecap, you say, okay, well, that happened. I won today. I got wins in there. No matter what happened here, I still got my wins in. So you can look back there and say, okay, things happened outside of my control. I pivoted accordingly. I had some things that were not ideal happen, but I got wins in there. And that's what I'm going to continue to carry forward. And so you'll have some days that are wins, some days that are losses, but you'll start to turn around that more days will be wins. More days will have these points. And they will be, because you're now looking at it that you don't need this monumental mark, like being on top of Mount Kilimanjaro to assume that's a win. It's going to be you getting those boots, finding that guy, learning the route, taking the exercises. And now that goal becomes in reach because you are now clawing your way there, because you're saying these are steps that I take to become better. And these better steps allow me to be the bigger person I will be, and allows me to get to that goal. And then you turn around and all of a sudden you're looking from the top of the mountain and said, well, that happened. What's next?
For sure. I'll add something there as well, which is, when people start to be competitive and there can be excuses made. And the one that's really common in the world of athletics, of course, is genetics. And it's like that person's biological makeup, for whatever reason, gives them such an advantage that I can basically check out, not worry about whether or not I'm competing at that level.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's some truth to that, but man, when it comes to marathon level and especially ultra marathon level, that genetic differential starts to be really diminished. You can take an average high school runner and turn them into a Boston qualifying marathoner if they just put in the work.
Yeah.
Now, somebody may get it quicker, may take them 1 year as opposed to 4 or whatever, but like that's so powerful. And I love the term Boston qualifier because it's such an achievable goal for those who put in the work year after year. But then when you get into the ultra space, dude, it's all work.
Yeah.
It's who put in the work and who has the grit and who has the grind. And you actually find a lot of people that are not technically elite runners that are considered elite ultra runners or elite Iron Marathon guys, just because it's a different attitude and they can't rely on their genetic abilities. I want to ask you something. So you talk about wins and, it's easy when things are going your way, obviously. It's easy when you get to go on the night out, but when things start to fall off, and I find this in myself for sure, you start to string together losses where, you go out, you have too many drinks, you're hungover. And so you have a bad meal because it makes you feel better. You have a bad meal, so you don't want to get in the gym. You're not motivated. You don't have the carbs that you need. You don't have the right kind of carbs. So these types of things, so you can string together a bad week and then you can string together a bad month. And then who knows what's going on with 75 hard. I'm not even on that. I'm on 75 round at this point. So like, how do you overcome that when that happens, especially someone that's in the process of writing a book about being fit? I'm sure that every day, every now and then you'll have, an off moment, either mentally or physically. How do you avoid stringing those together?
Every wrong choice only stops when you take a right choice, right? And so it's that point here, instead of always focusing on the wrong, you have to change your mindset. And it comes down to the gratitude aspect here, is that we take for granted so much of what we have. And if we get into the part of just awakening the right spirit to find your love in the moving. And so, we have an acronym in the book, and it's Aloha. Pili's, of course, Hawaiian. So, but it's how do we start our day? And it's really with awakening, love, opportunity, health, and aspiration. And awakening is really setting your mind right. So when you get up, you can have that time for you to get your collective together, to really just take the moment to get your space so you are now ready to take on the day. The love which is L, is now about finding the gratitude. And that gratitude can be in anything, that you have a comfy bed to sleep in, that you have healthy kids, that you have a loving spouse, that you have a job to go to, that you have a roof over your head, that you have clean water. All these things are things that we take for granted. And then to break your pattern, you're not having a good time, break your pattern. You got a comfy bed, go sleep on the floor for 4 days. Go sleep on the floor. Do that. Then get back in that bed and feel how great and how thankful you are for that bed, because you're sleeping on the floor for those days. Take a cold shower for a week. Get up at 2:30 in the morning just because. Get out there and push yourself to go out in the cold. Make a call to someone that you've had a distant relationship with because something's come through the middle of you, and say you're sorry, even if it's not your fault. Break the pattern to get yourself right, to get yourself back in the mood to say, okay, things aren't going my way, but I have so many things that are going my way. And I have to focus on them, because if I focus on them, I'm going to go to there. Because what happens when you focus on the things that are not going your way? Well, of course, they keep coming, right? Because all your energy is there. So you're manifesting more. Oh, I'm not working out. I'm not this. Well, you're manifesting that in your part. Where you say, okay, that has happened. I can't go back and change it. I can't go back and fix it. But all I can do is right now, I am controlling what I do, what I say, how I feel, and how I enact. And right now, I'm going to make the choice right now to choose to have a different perspective about where I am. And that's going to be the first step forward. And so many times we get lost in the past, saying the past is forever my future, but it's not. It has happened. And sometimes things happen are really bad, but you can't go back and erase it. What you can do is take a new step forward, a new direction, learn from what you've done, and take an active step in the direction you want to go from now on. And that might not be the right step, but at least it's a step away from where you are. And then you'll learn the next step once you find out the step you've taken is either on point or needs to be pivoted accordingly.
So here's something that I'm definitely picking up on from what you're saying. Sometimes you need to shift your perspective. And when things get really tough, it makes a typical, life in America seem not so tough, right? So if you're out there in the cold and you're putting yourself in a near-death experience on a weekly basis through training or otherwise, just being uncomfortable, it really prepares you to deal with actually challenging situations. Walk us through that.
Yes. And the other point forward is that you have to build a foundation. And it's like any house, right? The house doesn't just get built without a foundation underneath, or if the foundation is not suitable or substantial enough to carry the load of the house, of course, the house is not going to be built where a point is going to sustain. And that goes with us in our life. And so we have to set the narrative with how we build our foundation within ourselves so we're ready to take on more. And so pushing yourself outside the boundaries, whether it is getting up an hour early or whether it is, putting the moment where you're going to silence in front of yourself, or you're stretching yourself to get outside your comfort zone by talking to strangers or picking up the phone to make that sales call you're supposed to. That stretches your boundaries to create new levels of awareness for yourself, create new levels, because if you look at where you are today, you are now ready for harder things than you ever thought you were capable of 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, if you look back, you couldn't do something that comes easy to you today. But at every moment, it seems impossible to you until you do it. And then you look back and say, oh, that wasn't such a big deal. Problem is, we never look back at those things that we accomplish because now they become just rote for us in our day. And so to look back and say, okay, what was hard to me then? And that's where this book comes in, is that we've grown so much to be where we are today, but we're constantly learning. We're constantly moving ahead to try and find new ways to push ourselves to have a better life. But these are the steps we've learned so far. And there'll be people that might be a year behind us, 10 years behind us, that they can learn from these series and learn from these parts. And if they can learn from these steps in their days and say, okay, Jason and Pili struggled. Jason and Pili had these hard moments that were not ideal for them. And this is a step that they took that helped them change their course. And if we can help just one person understand that where they are is nothing to where they can be, it just starts with them taking the moment to say, okay, I'm not where I want to be. I admit that. But now I'm going to take a logical step to move myself into a new course of action that's going to allow me the possibility of becoming who I do want to be.
Like that. Okay, so this is something that's going on right now that you have to kind of weed through and see between the lines what's going on. But I really like the point you just made, because it circles back on the opening comments I made about the way that you are on social media, about check it off the box, on to the next. That is such a powerful concept, but even internally, that may be for you, like you're motivating, like you see that as like, hell yeah, like that's the attitude. But sometimes, I'm sure you do this as well because you just talked about it. It's also, you will sometimes get in a point internally where you need to remember, damn, look how far I've come. Mm-hmm. And I think that internally, we all are somewhere on this balance, but we all have a part of it. Like, if you need to be told or thought to yourself, I'm not where I want to be, that is a really powerful message. That's a powerful message, and sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating. Mm. Now, there can be another time where that exact same person needs to hear, look how far you've come. And like, as someone that coaches someone, for example, you got to be cautious about who you're talking to, where they lay on that spectrum, and what mood they're in about this particular topic. You have to be sensitive to, not everyone is like you, not everyone is the same, and not every situation is similar. So to coach them at an elite level, sometimes they need to hear, you're not putting in the work. Sometimes they need to hear, you're the baddest MFer on the planet, right? And it matters on who you're talking to. What do you think about that?
Well, day 15 is congratulating your future self. Because we honestly have to allow ourselves to manifest who we can be to become that person. And if you can't celebrate who you're becoming, you're not just going to show up. And I think that's where so much get lost. And again, social media does a horrible job assuming that if you have this giant house and this car or this, beautiful spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, you're happy. Where that's not the happiness, because people say, well, that must be happiness. And they strive for that. And again, and like, oh, I don't know. don't know if I'm happy, because that wasn't what they really wanted. They saw someone else's dreams and goals, and so they went after it. And so whether or not they got it or not, they're ultimately miserable because they're not chasing their dreams and they're not enjoying the process. And it's understanding that you have to just enjoy what you're doing. You have to understand that what you're building upon is the journey, right? What you're doing. And it's not always going to be good. But again, if everything was wonderful, you would take it for advantage because you wouldn't know that it was wonderful, because you wouldn't have the ability to say, oh, that was a bad moment, so here's a good moment. It's like if the sun was always up and the moon never came up and it never got dark, we would just never appreciate the sun, right? Because it was always there. But because the sun goes down, we appreciate when it comes back, and we appreciate when it's there. And when we have these longer days and these beautiful days, because we don't always have it. So when it's there, we can say, wow, this is great.
Really like that. So let's talk about the next big hurdle that a lot of people struggle with. If they struggle with the diet or the workout, and they start to get into those bad days, turn to week, turn to months, turn to years thing. Yeah. That's one thing. We've definitely discussed that. Another one is time. People that at least internally believe, look, I want to do this. I want to stay fit. I want to have 800 units. I want to write a book, but I sure can't do all of them at the same time. What do you think about time management and how that factors into this perspective?
So there is no time management, a perfect way of balance, right? So if you have a family, let's put me an example. So I have, real estate business, I have fitness. We have, of course, podcasting. I have my wife and my children, and they all have their levels of importance to me. But I can't say that they each get a balance of those perfect levels, because there's going to be certain parts of my life that at certain times are going to need more attention than the other. But again, it gets back to defining fulfillment. So one of the first step is day one, defining fulfillment. And so many times you say, okay, I want to be in shape, but you haven't really defined, you're just saying that narrative. I want to get fit, but that doesn't mean anything to you because you haven't defined what that actually is. You haven't defined why you want that. Do you want that so you can look better, to maybe potentially have a better way to find that perfect someone? Do you want to just be healthier so you can run around with your kids? Do you want to live longer? Do you want to get rid of, bad cholesterol? Do you just want to feel better? What is it that ultimately is defining this for you? And we say these things, and why they never happen is because they're not important enough to us yet, because we've given them ways, because our mind, again, is giving us that backdrop like, hey, it's okay if you fail, little Jason. So don't really put it out there. Just say it. Okay, I want to, lose weight. Well, that's all I'll say, but there's no why behind that, because now if I don't do it, it's okay because it really didn't mean that much to me. But when I invest in it, everyone has the same amount of time, right? Oprah, The Rock, everybody's got the same amount of time, and they're doing all these things and they're accomplishing all these things that we do. We're just choosing to find an excuse. And one of the days here is making excuses pay. Because the only way to make excuses pay is to change your narrative, change your wording. So it's no longer that I can't, it's how can I? And giving your excuse a name. So if your excuse is that I never have enough time, it's that, okay, not today, Betty. Or giving it a name there that you can now focus. So it becomes that point where you're almost like talking to yourself, but you're not. You're allowing yourself to have that alter ego who can tackle that excuse and can say, well, I have plenty of time. I have all the time in the world. So I am going to get that done. Because we trend to do the easy things in our day that are usually not that important, because that allows us to stay again in our comfort zone that we spoke about earlier.
How do you go about doing something like writing a book, which I know from personal experience can be a bit of a grind? What was the workflow like from a technical standpoint on a daily or weekly basis?
So Pili is an exceptional writer, right? So it was a lot of fun just to do this with her. We really just broke this down and said, okay, we need to make this manageable and actionable, because we know the one part here is that no one has time, no one has the ability, no one has the point. Well, Here's 15 days, within 10 minutes or less each day, you can do these. You can do these steps. Okay, if you don't have 10 minutes, then you need an hour, because you have 10 minutes. You're just making that next excuse right there.
Right.
And so for that point, let's get this down to blocks, and then we'll each just tackle blocks each day. Just someone pick a block and just start writing. Mm-hmm. So you have an overlap where some of these are some Pili, some myself, and some of these are a mix of us. And it's a mix of our personal stories, our lessons, and then the action steps you're going to take at the end of each chapter. And it just like what we got with running the race is that it was just mentality is that the only option is to get it done. And so just to get it done. Because as you know, for a book, you can edit this until the cows come home. You just keep editing it, keep adding, keep subtracting, keep adding, keep subtracting. But at some point, these are the lessons we know now that we are using. Here's what it is. May there be new lessons in the future? Sure. But right now, this is what we are using to carry ourselves forward. We know it can be beneficial for you to come in here and plug and play for what we've provided here.
Really like that. And look, you got to just get it done. And yes, of course, the editing process can go infinitely for sure. Let me ask you this. What are some of the goals you have for the book or as an author? What do you see as being the end goal here with this launch?
You know, it got to the point where we wanted to have something on paper that can really set up the narrative that's helped us. Because we know so many people are just, they want something handed to them. And I'm not saying this book is a handout in that fashion, but they want something handed to them, but they don't want to take action because everything becomes so convoluted, right? We don't want you going out there and doing a crash diet. We don't want you going out there and crushing yourself with a workout you can't compete with. We don't want you to go out there and take a big risk in your business. We want you to set up steps that can become your life. Mm-hmm. Because what this is here, this is not just okay, here's 15 days, you're here, you're going to be transformed. No, this is for you to set up a life plan for which you can do for your life and adapt as you can carry on. We don't preach dieting, we preach living. And this is about living. And the book here is just steps for you to take action steps to create the ideal life and the ideal day that can help you along your journey to find the fulfilling life that you deserve.
Really like that. Well, Jason, I really enjoy all these conversations. Looking forward to hearing how the book's going and definitely happy to have you on in a few months to circle back. I'm sure you'll probably learn a lot about the topic. I know once I did release my book, as soon as I clicked publish, it was like, oh gosh, I forgot so much I should have put in there. So I'm looking forward to this one. And then the number 2, I'm sure it'll be on the way soon. So before we jump off though, let the listeners know how they can learn more about your real estate company and also where they can get the book.
Awesome. Yeah. So you can go over to fitrichlife.com/book. Of course, you can find everything there. If you want to talk real estate, yarusiholdings.com, YARUSI holdings.com. So those would be the 2 places, fitrichlife.com/book and Yarusi Holdings. And again, thank you.
Yeah. Happy to do it, Jason. Thanks again. Let me ask you something. Are you sitting with a big chunk of cash in your bank account right now, staring at you, you're staring at it, and it's that awkward silence where you don't know what to do? Well, a lot of people are. And the reason that they're doing that is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace right now. And that uncertainty has put a pause on a lot of people's actions. So to get to the bottom of what's going on in the marketplace, we created a free webinar where I had 3 elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs come as panelists to answer the question of should we be investing in real estate deals right now. You can get access to that webinar for free at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals.